You're listening to Games from the Cellar, the board gaming podcast featuring authentic board gaming conversations. Tonight I was joined by John, Chris, and Sam playing the brand new game from Days of Wonder, Heat, Pedal to the Metal. So unfortunately, Adrian's not available today, so I'm going to do my best to give you the designer creds, and here they are. So Heat, Pedal to the Metal was designed by Asger Granerud and Daniel Skjold Pedersen. I think I did all right there, right? Sure. Anyway, readily available in 2023. Already, it has an 8.2 rating with 5,500 ratings and is ranked 139 overall. It's too early to tell if it'll win any awards, but my money is on yes. It's a 1 to 6 player light to medium weight racing game that should play in about 30 to 60 minutes. So thank you for joining us in the cellar as we go in depth with Heat, Pedal to the Metal. All right, so we got Heat on the table.
First time.
This is a new game. Notably, a new game that John has paid for full price.
Did you kickstart this one, John?
I don't know if I don't think this was even a Kickstarter. No, I purchased this at a local retailer, so I did it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I don't think this was a Kickstarter.
Yeah, and this was a little bit. It was getting a little bit hard to get, and I kind of moaned about that on the Discord site of a local game store, and they came back literally 2 minutes later and said, "I think we got a copy." I'm like, "Well, can you check?" And they said, "Yep, we got one." So they set it aside for me. The next day I ran out and I got it. So I got Heat. A lot of people are looking this for right now, but they're due to reprint it, so it's not going to be.
Which of our local game stores have a Discord?
It's more common than you might think. This is
Third Eye Comics or whatever it is, or what's that one down there?
It's the one in Savage.
It's the one in Savage Mill, which is Omni.
It is
Omnihedral.
Omnihedral is the name of it. Out in Savage Mill, Maryland. It's
the infinite-sided dice, or the all-facing, all-knowing sided dice.
I don't think I've ever been.
It's like exactly midway between Annapolis, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C.
But John's not a huge fan of Kickstarter, so I really did not think that he kickstarted this one.
I'm a huge fan of giving somebody money and them handing me a game immediately. I just feel good doing it that way, so that's why I went with this. And this is a Days of Wonder game, and I don't think Days of Wonder does anything with kickstarting. I think they just sell games, and that's what I did, so I got this game. So anyway.
Yeah, they make really nice games with really good presentations and fairly decent rule sets, and then they say, hey, guess what? You can buy this.
So, John, why did you want to buy this game?
You know, I like racing games, and one of the questions I asked, because a lot of people were saying, hey, this is kind of a neat racing game, and one of the questions I asked is, okay, are you playing a driver, or are you playing a syndicate where you're building a team and that kind of stuff? Because I like driving games. I want to be the guy in the car driving the car, and everybody came back and said, oh, no, this is a driver's game, and it is, so that was a good fit for me, and I got a chance to get it out on the table and just kind of play around with it a little bit. Yes, Chris?
Sorry. Was the question ever asked, will this piss Sam off?
That question was not asked.
We weren't to that yet, but
not
thank
even
you.
Quietly to myself. But it's the nice part about it is this plays very quickly. This is not a big, long, complicated game. We're not going to be playing Formula D can go on and on and on. This is not going to do that to you. This is going to kind of rock and roll. You're going to get around the lap. You're going to get around 2 laps real quick.
Promises.
We'll find out in just a minute. So fundamentally, there's no dice in this game. You're playing cards. You pick the cards you want to play. You play as many as you want based on what gear you decide to put your car in. You get around the track. You just can't go too fast when you go around the turns, just like in real racing. So you're all set to go. You have to manage the heat that your car, it starts overheating after a while, so you do need to manage that. A couple of I guess I'll call them clever mechanics, and there's even the ability to kind of do a little bit of deck building where you get to draft a new card into your deck. But that's something that we can talk about after we're done here.
So like a quote-unquote full game is playing 3 different races where you draft cards in between?
Yes.
Or is a full game one race?
The basic game is grab the cards that they recommend in the starting rules, play your game, play your race, you're done. Now you've learned how to play. The full game is 3 races with a draft in front of each one of them.
Okay. And John, tonight, are we doing the full game, or are we just doing one race?
I don't know.
Let's see how the first race goes.
We're going to do one race.
We'll figure it out.
Yep. And depending on how that goes, we may do the other 2.
Yeah.
But one race at least.
So 20 minutes ago, John and I were sitting here, or I was at least, exactly like you two are, going, how in the world does this work? And we played 2 turns, and it was we were playing.
I
We
read the-
both understood it was pretty simple mechanics.
I read the rules before I showed up.
Yeah, I've also read the rules.
Then why did you need to see the rule book once you showed up? Make sure we were playing by the official rules?
No,
John
like-
hadn't
No, that's
changed.
just,
I
that's
like
just Sam's thing.
touching
He's-
rule books.
Sam is very comfortable with a rule book in his hand or his lap. He likes to cuddle the rule books.
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a
He likes to
security
get
thing.
real intimate with the rule book.
You know,
It's what they're for.
it could be drugs or women. As addictions go, that's a pretty solid choice as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so Sam's read the rule book. I've read the rule book. When this
Okay, so we're all set.
came
I
out,
had never read the rule book, and I think I know the rules.
I'm pretty sure John touched the rule book at some point.
I did indeed touch the rule book at some point.
so when the announcement for this came out, that's when I read the rules. I watched a couple of the review videos or the preview videos. I was going to get this if John didn't. I just feel like this was a game that would be perfect for our group. It's got the racing for John. It's got the kind of deck hand management that I'm a fan of. And then who cares what Sam wants? He's going to play whatever we tell him.
And Chris doesn't even rate a mention.
I mean, Chris plays everything. Chris
is going to win.
He's very agreeable. He'll play whatever we put on the table.
Yeah.
I haven't heard Chris say he dislikes a game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Imperial Settlers.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but you were doing
But you
well,
still gave it a 7.
That's true. All right, so barring Imperial Settlers, I don't think I've ever heard Chris say that he doesn't like a game. So,
Everybody's happy.
I think everyone's going to be happy with this one.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Let's stop with the hypotheticals.
Let's get down to
Let's
playing.
put the mics down. Let's get this played.
All right.
All right, so let's talk about heat.
Wait, I think I'm still out on the track.
The lights are out. Chris is still driving. He's got a small,
Long ago, somebody left with the cup.
he's got a small flame coming out of his radiator.
That's why they call it heat.
So the
they
game's
do.
over. Steven won.
Quite handily.
Well, pretty handily, yeah.
Quite handily.
You had a turn to spare.
Nobody
and
finished
you
on the
were
same turn
wrapped
as him.
around
That's
past
true.
that finish line. So yeah.
I mean, what did I go? 19? No. 17 the last turn?
Yeah, you cleared it
You
with a
needed
healthy
like 10 or
distance.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
you
cruised
were good.
along, and that's fine. And to clarify, we played the intro game, and it
Not
took
a lot
us-
of extra rules.
Right,
With-
not a lot of extra rules. There's 4 of us, and we finished in what was it, an hour and 19. Okay.
For the first game, I think, honestly, I think we kind of jumped into it pretty readily.
Pretty quick. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
pretty smooth. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, when I tried this out myself, just to get a learning game under me, I made a fairly big mistake with the rules that kind of made the game really play weird because it had some follow-on effects. This time, I think we got just about everything right. For a little while we were missing the rule with the cooldown for the gimme spot, but other than that, everything I think we nailed it. Everything working the way it's supposed to.
I really wanted to figure out what happens when you do spin out.
We
I
figured
found
that
out
out?
pretty early.
You did.
I think you found out real early.
Yeah, and I spun out 2. And did you spin out just the once, or did you spin out
Just the
twice?
once.
Yeah, I spun out just once too, and we finished 3rd and 4th. So I'm thinking that perhaps that's not a good strategy, Chris.
Well,
We should stop doing
Steven and I were one space away from spinning out in that last corner.
that. Yeah, and to be fair, we were not terribly far behind.
No, I mean,
It's
if
not-
Steven had pulled a 4 instead of a 3,
Which I wouldn't have done because I had, chances were very slim
chances
because
were
I
very
had
slim.
2 4s
you had
in my
2
hand.
in your hand.
Already
But
in
if
your
you
hand.
had,
And that's why I took that calculated
it would
risk.
have thrown things off. It was a very calculated risk.
Yeah,
Kudos.
I was doing my best to, knowing that once I got out of that corner, I was trying my best to hold on to my 4s and 5s so I
Yeah.
could just scream across
Right.
the finish line.
So we were playing on the British map, where once you get through that little serpentine patch, you've got just forever to go before you hit your next turn. And then that turn is at speed 10, so you can just rip around that corner of the track. And one of the mechanics of the game is you end up with you get these heat cards and they get stuck in your hand, so they aren't any good for you. So you need to find a way to burn those off. When you're moving at speed 1 or 2, you have the ability to burn those cards off. So when you're down and through that serpentine part and stuff like that, where you need to be moving more slowly anyway, that allows you to burn that heat off. When you get out into that open space, that's where you want to just be playing all your high number cards. You want to be up speed 3 or 4.
What was the name of the other ones that you got?
Stress cards?
The stress cards.
Yep.
Yeah, when you spin out, you get 2 additional ones. And they have 5.
Yeah.
We got 2 additional.
It was 2.
So you have 5 now in your
Oops,
hand.
we did get a rule wrong. Or at least I got a rule wrong because I took 3.
You took 3.
So I had 5 of them in my hand going into that twisty turny thing,
Right.
and I had to play the cards that were in my hand. So I was getting heat, and I was getting that, and there's no option.
You cannot discard those cards
In the base version.
But you can play them, but then you draw another card. You don't know what your speed's going to be. And
Exactly.
when you have to
taking
go
a
3
little bit
across
of
the line,
so it adds
you can't
risk
play that.
because it adds unpredictability
Yes.
to how you play. And that's
see-
sort of the nature of the game. So if you play very conservatively, you know what you're doing. It's going to happen. You got some control. The minute you start pushing your luck, which you kind of have to do if you want to win, you got to push your luck in this game. That's when things start getting a little bit more difficult. You have to start playing those cards that bring random cards up into your play when you're getting around the track.
Yeah, so you were talking about using your low speed to dump heat in that real tight serpentine, where my strategy was to have all of my heat back on my board so I had it to spend while in that serpentine.
Yeah, no, you wanted to
Sure.
dump your heat
So
right after and right before.
like the 2 turns before the serpentine started was when I was going slow.
Right, because you've got, and there is some space there because there's that early turn on the British track that you are. It's very likely you're going to get down to speed 2.
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean the last go around the track, I went from last place. I think I actually jumped into first place for a round.
Yes.
just enough to ruin it for you.
Just enough to ruin it for me because I went through 2 turns at once, and I had the heat to do that. I didn't have the heat to do anything else, but I held on to second place.
Yeah. Because I had burnt all of my heat getting out of the serpentine by going through
Yeah.
2.
So-
and then,
Okay, so
and then I knew that I wasn't ever going to dump it again, so I just went up to 4.
you just could just
Yeah.
run it, yeah.
Yeah.
So the 2 parts of the game that I think are, if I can call it controversial, is I go last, therefore I get to dump heat for free and get a free space for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
John does not like catch-up mechanics.
I mean,
It seems pretty arbitrary to me.
Yeah, so like thematically, if you watch F1, which is what this is based off of, like how thematically is the person in 20th place getting an extra like 10 feet?
Adrenaline boost, yeah.
Yeah, it just. I mean, to me, it's like you should drop back because obviously you're not driving.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found it a little ridiculous.
It's a catch-up mechanic.
It is
It's
a catch-up
mechanic.
That's
I
basically
don't mind
what it was
catch-up
about.
mechanics. I thought it was fine. Sure,
And
it doesn't
honestly-
have a thematic justification, but I felt like it was a strong mechanic, and I felt like it added to the gameplay.
And honestly, I didn't feel like. I mean, I never had to use it, but just watching you guys use it, I didn't think it made that much of a difference anyway.
No, it did.
Because it's a onesie, but you do
It's
get
a
to dump some
onesie,
heat.
and then you get to dump the heat. So,
And that one free space, and then you get to do the slipstreaming,
Right.
does help because you don't have to calculate
Right.
exactly where somebody else is going to be.
It gives you a little bit more wiggle room where you can try and stay with the pack.
and could perhaps move you from last place to first place when you include the slipstream with it, because the people in the back get to slipstream and the people in the front don't.
Yeah.
So the other item, so I'm on the fence with that. It's okay, but I wouldn't have included it if I had done it that way. And then the other one is the slipstream where you must move to, and at times, frankly, it's not necessarily an advantage to be in first place in this game. In fact, really, the only time it's an advantage of being in first place in this game is when you're crossing the finish line, because you are giving everybody behind you a
I don't
jump
agree
up.
with that always, because it's an advantage if you're across a line, then somebody has to, because it adds speed to them as well. So if you make it past a turn and you're getting somebody, they're going to have to take some heat to get around in
Well,
front
so
of you.
slipstreaming doesn't add to your speed.
but
Right.
it can put you across
It
another
could put
corner.
you over the line.
Right.
But that's as more often than not, that's a big advantage, not a disadvantage. It allows you to weasel across the line. So it's giving the people that are farther back some pretty plush benefits.
It is
And-
another
and
catch-up
frankly,
mechanic.
and historically, F1 doesn't really do very well with slipstreaming. So I'm not sure exactly, but it's again it's a way to tighten up the pack. And I'm always a big fan of, hey, give me a level playing field, and if I suck up the joint, that's my business. All right, I didn't do as well, and I came in a distant third in this race because I spun out, and that's what happens when you spin out.
Yeah,
So I think thematically the catch-up mechanics might not make 100% sense. 100% sense. But I'm fine with that because I thought they added to the gameplay, right? I mean, I'm not normally a huge fan of racing games. I enjoyed this one because there was kind of a rubber banding effect for the back of the pack, right? When you were in the back, you might get the freebie space if you were actually in last, and you probably were going to be able to slipstream and kind of keep up, right? I mean, you guys, like Chris and John, were in last, but you weren't like a distant third. You were a turn behind.
Well,
coming out of
Steven
the super tight
finished
serpentine.
a full turn before you two, and then you two finished the race.
Yeah, that was just
And
the
then
end of
you
the
finished
game.
And then
after
we
that.
we
that
didn't
was-
take the last turn, so
Oh,
I'm still technically out on the track. You turn the lights off, and I'm still sitting
Right.
there.
Well, you know,
But
you're
would
30
take me-
seconds behind in a real
but the
race, and
cars
that's
were
pretty
still
reasonable.
close enough together that interaction was a concern, right? Like the turn before Steven won, he and I were jockeying for position going around the corner.
I'm just thinking that's in a game that plays as quickly as this. And frankly, this was our first game. This is a learning game. Get the feeling if we played a second time, we'd be punching this out 10 or 15 minutes faster because you guys had to keep waiting for me to remember to move my gear and get my cards laid down and everything else.
I think the only hang up I had was the barrier to entry to learn the iconography was really high with this.
Yeah, I agree.
I think with
Yeah.
repeated plays,
Well, but you can argue
It'll-
that about anything.
yeah.
I mean, the other thing, I think,
If you read
all I'm
German
saying.
enough, you'll learn how
Yeah.
to
Well,
speak
see, that's
German
what
too.
I'm speaking to what you're saying.
Yeah.
The next few times we play, we'll probably knock 10, 15
Right,
minutes
we'll
off
get through that.
I don't-
because we've learned the iconography and we can kind of parse it easier.
right, and I don't mind when iconography is hard to parse, right? It can be confusing, whatever. If it's helpful, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't know that this was helpful.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
that's
Right.
helpful.
So yeah, I get what. So to that point, if it's hard to parse, are you actually translating it properly? So like we were looking at some of the icons, and it's like, okay, here is a trash can with an X on it. Does that mean we can never discard this card? Can this card not go into the discard pile? And what it actually means is it can't be discarded from your hand.
Into the discard pile.
In
Into
a
the
very
discard pile.
specific step,
And
because
it-
that rule is broken in the advanced rules.
Yeah. And so it kind of, so that's one example. There's other examples about how,
frankly, there are 9 steps over the course of the turn, right? On your turn, you do 9 different things, which sounds like a lot because 9 is a pretty big number of discrete steps that you take during your turn. My problem with Heat and with a whole bunch of games, it's not just Heat, is it's an inflated number. One of those steps is you draw up to 7.
and the other one is the one before it is discard as many cards from your hand as you want.
Right.
And then the next step is draw up to 7.
Right.
I get it because this is Days of Wonder.
And then
And-
you have choose your speed, and then the next step is play that many cards.
Play that many cards. So this is Days of Wonder. And Days of Wonder is a company that above all else tries to make family weight games. And I think in an effort to keep this family friendly, they broke it down into all those extra steps to make it so that it's very difficult to skip those
And
little steps.
no, and I get that.
So like for us, we could look at it and say, okay, there's actually 5 steps.
yeah,
But if
that.
you go to like Target and pull this off the shelf as like a birthday present, and this is like the first game you buy,
Okay.
you might need those.
You don't want to be
So-
looking at like
so-
step 1, part A
so
or whatever.
you're missing the cross-purpose problem with that is you're breaking it into 9 steps so that each step is nice and atomic and more straightforward. But then the board that tells you what those steps are is all arrows and circles and little
Yes.
symbols and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so what they're doing is they're at cross purposes with
Yeah,
each other. So they're
and-
try to have it both ways. And,
Yeah,
and,
is
and
it
just
is it
doesn't
cheat
work out.
sheet? Fine, break it down into an atomic level, whatever, right? But when you're putting it into icons, especially like stylized, thematic, look at the car dashboard
Yeah.
icons, it's hard to read.
So that's
I
a
think they
challenge.
could have been clearer, like very simple. And then you could look into that, kind of remind you, it's like, okay, if I'm doing a boost, then show me a symbol of a boost. I don't need to see all the...
Yeah, that was the other thing. It's like sometimes the only symbol in there is the heat icon and then like the cooling icon. And it's like, okay, so is this the step where I cool, but why is the heat icon there? And it's like, is there a heat step that I'm missing, or is it telling me to like remove heat because I'm cooling? It was just,
it
was kind of weird.
The heating and the cooling, I think they overcomplicated. They should have had one symbol with +1 and -1 on it, or +2 and -2,
No,
and
I
then just
don't-
use color.
I'm not.
And that would
well-
have that would have removed some of the load for the stuff that you have.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I liked the little fire symbol for heat and the blue thermometer for cold. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that to me is okay. It was just that combination of symbols with no real explanation as to why they're both there.
Yeah,
It didn't make, because having the cooling symbol means you take one of the heats out of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so why do you have the little heat symbol? I don't know.
So why not have a single symbol?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Different
For-
color,
it's
and a
because
plus and a minus.
that step was actually where you get to use all of the icons you have on your turn. That's why there were three.
My point is that heat symbol is all over the place in the game, and the cool symbol is all over the place. And not all over, but in multiple places, and they could have reduced that.
The name of the game is heat.
The name of the game is heat. I think the problem is
All
like
right, we're going to stop this because
Okay,
we're
we're gonna
going
stop.
too far on this.
Yeah.
All right. All that to say, I think both of them should be there, just not in the same spot together. Anyway.
And to be fair, I know for a fact that people that are responsible for the rule book and the likes are doing a rewrite. So version 2 of this game is going to have hopefully a more clear description of a lot of the symbols that they have.
I thought the rules were fine. It's just the board was confusing.
All right, so all right, now that I'm thinking about what you're saying, in the rule book, we didn't really see this. There's the whole concept of the inside and the outside line.
Yeah, that was a mess.
And so in that, I recall there being an issue in the rule book. So they're going to clarify that. We didn't really mess with that because I don't think it really mattered for us so much.
I don't think we ever had anybody. It was a couple places where somebody tied, but it's just if you're closer to the racing line, then you're in first.
So I don't know about you guys, but I was making sure we were putting the cars in the right place.
Yeah, that seemed like a pretty basic
it's just,
one to me.
and those are the kinds of things. I mean, they're little misses. And I'll be honest with you, we've talked in the past when we talked about team manager. We talked about Blood Bowl team manager. One of the things we talked about is really good development. The rules are clear. The symbiology is clear. Everything that is on that board makes sense. It's intuitive. It just runs. And in this game, there are places where you say, no, I have to stare at this board, figure out where that race line is. And once you find it, you're good. Yeah. But there is that pause to do that. And that's the kind of thing where
I did have to take like 15 seconds to find the stinking line every time I looked at the board.
So the one thing I will say, going back to team manager and development, we didn't really have to like look up for any rule clarifications other than the symbols.
No,
Yep.
It was pretty straightforward.
Yep.
I mean, the game itself.
So it can be done.
The game functions very well. It's just the symbols kind of get in the way.
Yeah, but not
you mean for heat?
For heat, yeah.
for heat. Yeah, the symbols got in the way a little bit. I mean,
but we were never like, well, wait a minute, what does this card mean? Let's go to the glossary.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were playing the basic game where the cards have virtually no symbols on them.
Yeah, I looked through the advanced ones, and
frankly, I looked.
Not even looking at the advanced rules, I knew exactly what the cards
I
did.
looked at. So I didn't look at the cards. I looked at the advanced rules, and they had a little glossary where they showed all the symbols.
Yeah.
And those all seemed really straightforward.
Except those are the ones they're getting all the questions on, and they're redoing that page because it is insufficient. So that's what I'm saying. And I get it. And second printing on this thing is due like any day now. And I get the feeling that the new rule book is
You
going
gonna
to
turn that
be
one
better.
in and get another one?
No.
You gotta print it out. And
it took me
tape
all
it
that
over?
time to get everything out of that insert so I could throw the insert away. This game is now perfect. I got my Ziploc bags. I got everything piled into the box, room to spare in case they do an expansion. It's perfect.
I saw him. He held it up to his ear and shook it really loud just to make sure everything settled properly.
I want a nice solid rattle in there. That's right.
And that's how board games should be.
Exactly.
Yikes. I want to be able to rattle my board game and have it be silent.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Well, I mean,
it's the whole Apple. It's the unboxing video era of the game must delight me when I open the lid. And it's like,
So
well,
I
if that's
still
your thing,
remember.
that's
So
fine.
I still remember when we played the Dark Souls board game. I don't think I played with any of you guys, but opening the lid is a delight because you open the lid up and there's just a black page that says "You died" on top, which is
that's funny.
Which
That's
is
another
great.
story. Yeah.
That's funny.
Getting back to Heat, Steven, you
Back to
won.
Heat. So, I did win. And, I do like this game. I guess we're going to throw it to the BGG ranking thing, right?
We'll use BGG's ranking.
Yes.
I mean, if we
I mean,
have
it's
to.
1 to 10, right? That's where we go with this.
You're holding
So-
a gun to my head, but okay.
So, Heat is a game that it's a lot of fun. It's real pretty to look at, and I like games that are deck buildy and have a hand management element to it, and that's what Heat is. Yeah, it is a racing game, but in essence, I think it's really like a deck card hand management game. Because, like I said, I think the secret to my success was being able to manage what cards I had in my hand at certain stages in the track, and then managing my heat, which a lot of people, I think, at first blush think is just something to junk up your deck, but when in actuality it's actually a resource to be used.
Yep.
Right.
And so I think the interplay between using the heat resource and holding on to cards for certain aspects of the board, it really clicked with me, and I had a lot of fun with it. So in the end, the Heat gets a 7 for me because it hits all the things that I like in games. And then, the F1 was kind of an added bonus.
All right.
So, Sam, you were second.
I was second. So I do have to say Heat is definitely one of the games of all time.
It's a game of all time.
It is a game, yes. So I enjoyed Heat. I wasn't sure I would. It's a racing game.
Sam don't like racing games.
Don't like racing game.
Why do you make me play these stupid
Oh,
games?
it's like the voices in my head have access to microphones.
Carry on.
But
But
you
I-
liked this one.
I did enjoy it. It was nice. It wasn't.
It wasn't pure racing.
So I don't normally like racing games. With this one, there wasn't too much racing. There was a lot of hand management. And frankly, I really enjoyed the catch-up mechanic. All right? My least favorite part about racing games in particular, and any game in general, is when you just sit there and watch the leader get farther and farther away, and there's nothing you can do. And at least in other games, you can, build your base or accrue resources or pursue your own thing, right? But in a racing game, the only thing you get to do is just watch as every turn they just kind of continue showing how far ahead of you they are, which I don't particularly enjoy. But in Heat, there's actually 2 different catch-up mechanics that really influence how you interact with the other cars on the track. It's actually the only way you really interact with the other cars on the track, which I found refreshing. It's definitely not one that I'd, pull off the shelf first, but I would for sure play it again. So with that in mind, I have to give this a solid 7. This is good.
And from Sam for a race game, that's a solid endorsement because this is not in your wheelhouse.
I got to ask you, though. So, in your experience, if we were to ask you what your top 3 racing games were, if we're like, Sam, go pick a racing game right now, which racing game do you think would be
Winner's Circle.
What was the one where you had a whole team of cars?
Thunder
Alley.
Thunder Alley? Probably Thunder Alley.
Okay.
I enjoyed Thunder Alley.
And then this one,
This
close
was
after
probably
that.
up there, yeah.
Yeah, and Thunder Alley is hand management.
I remember
as well.
there's one you guys like to play where the only fun bit for me is halfway through the first lap. I'm so far behind, I get to try and T-bone whichever sucker is in front of me, and then I walk away from the table. And I think I've done that the last 3 or 4 times you've convinced me to play.
So
And that's why we don't play Bolide with Sam anymore.
Yeah. Sorry.
we need to play Russian Crush with Sam. He
Because
can,
then you're
Can-
allowed to
because
shoot
he
at
can
them.
actually T-bone
Yes.
somebody.
We just need to play Russian Crush. That's a good game.
Maybe we'll put that on the list too. So Heat is a mixed bag for me. There's a good game here, and I'm going to be honest with you. One of the things I mentioned a couple times while we were playing is not only is there a good game here, but I think there are all the components for people to really get creative and turn this into some different games as well. There's a whole bunch of advanced rules cards that you could build your deck. You as it stands now, it's draft, and you don't pull a whole lot of cards when you look at the advanced rules. But people could play around with that. They can make a change, and of course, with any game like this, that's like a racing game, there's a basic fundamental running gear to it, and then you can change things as you see. as you see fit. So I'm going to disagree on the catch-up mechanic as being important because I just don't think the game doesn't last long enough for it to be that big a deal. And the fact that somebody has done exceptionally well, it probably means they've burned up their 4 and 5 cards in order to do that, which means yours are still in your hand or still in your deck, and his are not. So you got a shot at catching up just because of that anyway. But in a game that's this short, I don't think it's important. It's not a deal breaker for me. But I just don't think that one in particular. I'm okay with the slipstream because it just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
and
the adrenaline one is a little mismatched.
It just looks oddly placed.
The slipstream one makes more sense to me, and I'm okay with it because on any given turn, up to N-1 of the people can do slipstreaming. Mm-hmm. So the only person that couldn't potentially do a slipstream is the first place person.
Oh, unless they're lapping somebody.
You're never going to lap somebody in this game.
So to me, it's not really a catch-up mechanic. It's more of a just kind of bonus movement that everyone but the first player gets.
Yeah, I suppose.
So I mean, little column A, little column B, but I don't have as big a problem.
I will say, I think I would enjoy this more with the advanced rules. I'm a sucker for advanced rules.
I agree with that.
We'll definitely revisit this with the advanced rules. So, do we get a number from Chris? Because he's still on the track, right?
We still didn't get a number from John.
I got a pile that I haven't gotten to yet.
My apologies.
That was
Somebody
just my
start
interest.
a stopwatch.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is it is worth getting yourself through the rule book and through the iconography in order to play this game, because you're going to look at it and you're going to say, oh, where'd this come from? And I got to figure that all out. And we are seasoned gamers. We've got like 60 or 80 years of long-haired board games total experience.
I can feel the salt coming off of John.
Well, I'm just saying, and from what I can tell, the publishers are aware of that, and they're making changes. So and that's fine. So I think that problem is going to work itself out. And like I said, it is worth getting through it because there's a good game here. Now, I'm not a big hand management kind of guy for something like a racing game, because as far as I'm concerned, you should be throwing dice somewhere. All right, this game has cards that let you throw dice. They're not real dice, but you get to throw a card down that says, I'm going to take the next card off my deck that moves me, and please, oh please, don't let it be a 4, because I need a small number. I need to move a little, not a lot, and I'm willing to take that risk. And that is a catch-up mechanic that I'm a lot more comfortable with, where you take risk and you get what you get, and there is a negative pressure that maybe you don't want to do that. And similarly, we've talked about in previous games where when you're out in the lead, you can afford to be more conservative, you can afford to play a little more safely, as long as you don't do it too much, because it gives people too much of a chance to catch up. If you're behind, you can exchange extra risk in order to get extra bonus. And I'm more comfortable with that sort of catch up. And this game has that. And does it very nicely with a set of cards, because cards usually don't allow that. They figured out a nice way to ease that in. It's not complicated, but there's certainly risk involved, and it can end up giving you a real big boost, the way the game is laid out. So I'm fine as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, those are focus cards.
The stress cards.
Stress cards are called.
So yeah, the stress cards were an interesting mechanic. I do agree.
Yes,
that was a good mix of luck into that.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious to call them stress cards. I might have just called them push your luck cards, but that's okay, because that's what you're doing. You're pushing your luck.
Yeah, focus makes more sense, right?
I think focus makes more sense.
No. The idea is your driver is stressed, and so you don't have perfect control over how fast the car is moving, right? That's why when you spin out, you gain more stress. It's a fine name.
And I guess because they junk your hand up, because you can't discard those cards.
Yeah.
You have to play them to get rid of them.
You have to play them. I mean, it's fine. It's fine.
It's nomenclature. It just is a name that may or may not make sense. I don't know. I can't think of a better name,
it makes no sense to me, but I suppose everybody comes to it from a different perspective, and that's fine too.
Anyway, we interrupted. Continue.
But I think there's a good game here. I think it's neat that there's an opportunity to make more good game here. They could certainly release some more maps, but I think people out there in the world playing this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing it right now, are saying, hey, how about everybody gets to draft 5 cards and we play that way, or whatever. Find ways to kind of take this as like a kit to create the racing game that you really want, or build a map that you're a little more interested in, and that kind of thing. So I think from that perspective, I think it's a nice game. I'm going to give it a strong 7, in spite of the fact that I think it's got a pretty solid entry barrier. Push yourself through that barrier, and if you are not an experienced gamer, you're going to have to do some pushing. If you are an experienced gamer, you're going to look at it and you're going to kind of drum your fingers and go,
yeah, you'll roll your eyes.
But that's all right. Right now it's a little hard to get, but the new version is coming out, or new printing is coming out pretty soon. So keep an eye out. Don't pay a crazy amount of money. Don't get a copy that's written in German. Wait for whatever your language is. Wait for the copy.
It's coming.
It's Days of Wonder. It's I'm just drawing a blank on Days of Wonder's parent company name. Asmodee, who of course publishes everything. This is not a Kickstarter that's going to be hard to find. Give it a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to get a copy of this game, and I think it's a solid purchase. If you can get it from a discount house, that's great. If not, I think it's worth a shot and pay the full price.
I mean, this is the company that has sold 5 million copies of Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
So they're printing this game on Ticket to Ride money, which
Right,
essentially means
exactly.
it's going to be in infinite supply.
Yep.
It just needs time.
Yep. If there is a demand, there will be a supply.
Yep. Just be patient. Make sure you get it.
All right, speaking of being patient,
Chris?
I think Chris may have finally crossed the finish line.
I don't know. The lights are out. I can't really tell.
So he gets a chance to speak.
Can you honk your horn for us? Let us know where you're at.
How do you feel about this game, Chris?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting. This is the first game where it was the first game for all of us. And
Yeah.
I think
John had played it a couple times. So,
But he said solo.
I
That's
mean,
around,
it was totally different because we were just
Solo
Sam
games
and I
don't count.
Yeah. Sam and I have extensively read through the rules, so we were.
So
well
I was the
prepared
only
for this
one that had no idea. What
All right,
was
full
going on
disclosure,
going into
I listened to a guy talk about the rules on YouTube on the way here.
Okay, so I've read the rules.
But I just think it's interesting. We had never played this game before, and some of our playing styles did come out, and it worked really well for you, and you did well as well. It's like, because I took the first turn and I didn't take any heat. I'm trying to avoid it, and like Steven's saying, he's using it as a resource.
Yeah, you
got to
use up all the. I told you at the first turn, if my car's not on fire going over the finish line, something's wrong.
So with that, I mean, I found it interesting that, like John keeps on saying, there is more of a game to this than what we saw came out tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight was just kind of like a trial run, learn everything. I mean, halfway through after we finished one lap, Steven goes, "Hey, the guy in the back gets to drop an extra heat with the adrenaline rush for free."
And
it's
that's
like,
not what I said. I was like, wait.
what
What
does
does
this
this symbol mean?
What does this symbol
this,
mean?
Why is this set of symbols together? What does this mean? So yeah, and
So I mean, I put this as a good racing game that we can learn more and will become more familiar. Hopefully it doesn't come like Imperial Settlers or some of the games where we what was the one with the iconic, it looked like a tarot board or whatever, the tarot cards. Illimat, where we kind of figure out the game behind that one, and we kind of ruin
The
it.
game
It's kind of like,
changed, yeah.
I'm moving 2 spaces. It's like I can see that kind of us jockeying around, but that's a fun in-game part of it as well. So there's a lot of different aspects, I think, and I think I am excited to play the more advanced rules of it. So if you were to ask me my rating of it, it's kind of hard because I'm a person, I like to play a game a couple times before
we've waded into our ankles and not a whole lot further.
Yeah. So, I mean, I give it a flat 7 just because my car has 4 flat tires. But
They're melting.
they melted because my engine exploded. But it was one thing there is a catch-up mechanic, but once you spin out, that kind of you need that catch-up mechanic, which I didn't get until like the last turn.
Right.
You kind of followed me through. You took me over at the end,
Yep.
and you had dumped all your heat. You got that extra move,
Yep.
and it worked out really well for you. And then I'm still, when we open up the box again, I'll push my car across the finish line.
All right.
all right. So that was Heat. Looking forward to trying it again with some of the advanced rules.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, the other part of it is the iconography. Iconography. Thank you.
The hieroglyphics.
Mississippi education again.
Yes.
Deck building and kind of hand managementy.
Ish.
Is that what we're going to go with?
There is a hand management
Call it whatever
element.
you